Hopefully we are all now connected more securely and can proceed, subject to Mr. Vivian becoming better connected. So we ended round about my question W5, and that was on the second item on the agenda. Looking at the further questions I had raised in 6 and 7, I think I've got enough now on that second item of the agenda, so I don't really need to go into any further. But Mr. Campbell and Mr. McKinney, you were disadvantaged, so or you might feel you were disadvantaged by the IT issues. So I just want to give you the chance to tell me whether or not you're happy to move on, or whether there's something that we really need to get into. With the caveat that I assure you, I've got all the written evidence already that I'll take into account. But that said, if there's something which needs to be said now, then let's do that. Mr. Campbell, I think you're waving at me.
Yes, I'm not going to give evidence. I had an opportunity to discuss with Mr. McKinney over the lunch break what Mr. Teed had been saying this morning, and I think Mr. McKinney's got a brief response to that. So I'll just leave it to him.
Yep. I think one of the concerns that I have from parts of this morning's sessions that I did hear was the generality of a lot of the discussion and how that relates or does not relate to, for example, the Circular 3/2012, which is quite clear and specific in what it seeks and what it wants to achieve. So a generality in terms of forecast ratios and a lot of use of averages, that is of concern to me. Another concern arising as well is the discussion that the school roll at Whitecross is somehow going to magically recover itself. And we know that across Scotland, schools regularly close because there's no pupils, including 2 schools this past session in Falkirk that have closed from a lack of pupils. So Whitecross is no exception to that. And it is the case then that the roll at Whitecross could go on to decline and decline further to the point at which it closes. And in that sense, then we have to consider, well, the new housing development simply slots in on top of that school roll decline. And that school roll decline, we go back to birth rates that we mentioned previously. The trend in Scotland has been, as I mentioned earlier, has been in decline, and not only in recent years, but it's been in decline since 1900, when it was probably at its highest rate. In 1991, we had a birth rate in Scotland of 13.2 per 1,000 population, and in Falkirk it was 13.6 per 1,000 population. It's currently 9.1 in Scotland and 9.1 in Falkirk, and that's based on the 2019 registration year. So that's a 33% reduction in the birth rate in Falkirk Council. And if you go back in the previous years, that is part of an ongoing trend of decline. And the recoveries that may take place, usually, they're not sustained recoveries, they're always going down. There's no 10-year cycle. That is just something that is somewhat misleading. To plan for new schools or capacity across Scotland based on all peak rolls that a school has had in the past 10, 20, 30 years, then the cost to the development industry, it just would not be sustainable. It just could not take place.
Okay.
Quite worried about a concerned of the use of averages and the lack of acknowledgement that there's a very difficult circumstance facing the country in terms of future birth rates. We're probably more than likely going to see a substantial drop due to COVID. And as well as that, we don't have any significant economic growth that's going to assist or boost people in workplace. In fact, they're looking at further job reductions. We're likely to see that ongoing into some stage into next year, if not beyond. So
Yeah.
the economy and its link with birth rates all is going one direction, and that is down. And I think that's
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. So I think that's all we want to say. Mr. Teed's put his hand up, but I think that's all we want to say in response to the evidence just now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. King. And that reflects a lot of the written evidence you've given me, but I think it was important to give you the opportunity to see it because it might have been further informed by the discussions that we had earlier this morning. Mr. Teed, I mean, I think I understand where the parties are coming from here. If you've got something you want to respond to, then that's fine. But we could go on forever if we just keep repeating, our positions. But is there anything you feel you have to say in response to what Mr. McKinney just said there? I can't hear you, Mr. Teed.
I just wanted to sort of draw your attention again to in the response to the procedure note document that was submitted, the 5th page. There's a chart which tracks the birth rates in Falkirk with the corresponding primary intakes, and that clearly shows a sort of 10-year cycle of peaks and troughs, which is actually happened. We're on the downward trend now, but if we can't continue to follow that, so I would dispute what Mr. McKinney says about there being a downward trend, over time in Scotland and Falkirk, because that's certainly not the data that we've got. That births do follow a trend of peaks and troughs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Teed. I'm just going to have to take those points away and come to my view on that, my own view on that matter. Okay, I think I'm ready to move on to the third item in our agenda, and these last three for the first hearing session shouldn't take so long. Number two, as I expected, would be taking the longest. Yeah, I think I probably put the question in the agenda. I've got the responses to question 8, question W8. So my question is one for the appellant, and I guess maybe, well, I don't know whether it be Mr. Campbell or Mr. McKinney speaking on the appellant's behalf, but is on the basis of what the council said in response to that question, does the appellant agreement would be possible, leaving aside these other decisions, but if we're talking about phasing, that there was to be a planning application, does that look like it's likely to be a sticky issue, or does it look like that's something which the council and the appellant would be able to resolve in terms of phasing?
We think that that's a matter that we ought to be easily able to resolve, with one caveat, which is that despite requests from the appellant, the council has still not produced a draft 75 agreement for this examination. Those instructing me have offered to prepare it for them, but that offer has been turned away for reasons that I'm afraid I don't understand. So we don't have a text in front of us on which we could work, and that will inevitably delay any resolution of the question which is asked at W8. But in principle, sir, I don't see any reason why the answer should not be affirmative.
That's helpful. So, Mr. Teed, indeed is for you to answer. I don't know whether this would be something that would have been for Mr. Vivian, but this side, leaving aside drafting the Section 75, but is the approach to how you would subsequently phase payments if there was to be a planning obligation. are you confident that that's something that should be resolvable between the parties without me having to say in any decision that the payment should be phased in this particular way? Is that something I could leave to the parties?
Yeah, we've not had any trouble in the past with similar applications. So we usually get to this point in a proposal and the heads of terms are agreed, and then once the proposal's been agreed in principle, then the phase-in's discussed. Yeah, it's just about looking at the immediacy of the impact, you know. So it's just making sure that there's a compromise between the developer's cash flow and the money that needs to be spent by the council to enhance capacity at the school, so that it's ready for when the houses are built and people start moving in.
Okay, well, that's very, very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. So that deals with item 3. So item 4 was about provision for full and partial refund of contributions. So again, I've probably put this out in the agenda, but let me just set my understanding. And this is largely from Mr. McKinney's initial report. And you don't necessarily have to have it in front of you, don't think. Paragraphs 113 to 116 of that. So as far as I understand the appellant's case, as put to me in that there, is that planning obligation should allow for the reconsideration of the need for investment should future school roles turn out to be lower than projected. And I think I heard Mr. Keith say something to the effect that they wouldn't build an extension if they then subsequently thought it wasn't necessary. But also, it seemed to me the appellant was going a little bit further and saying there should be a provision for the reimbursement of some of the contribution if it turns out to have been more than was required. So I wonder, is what the appellant's saying that it's not just saying there should be a provision for paying back unspent money because it was decided that the school extension could be smaller, but also that even if there should be a provision, even if money spent, there should be a scope for a refund back to the even if money spent by the council on an extension, let's say the whole contribution is spent, that if it turns out that there's much less children in that school than we thought there was going to be, that there should be a scope for a refund back to the appellant if that turns out to have been the case. So first of all, Mr. McKinney, is it those two eventualities the appellant is arguing should be covered by the section by its planning obligation?
Yes, I would want to ensure that the appellant, in terms of making or signing up to Section 75 contributions, is covered in the event, first of all, in terms of the event that no school development is necessary, i.e. the numbers that come forward and the role of the school remains within its capacity. And then if there is a need for an extension, that extension and cost should be directly related to what is provided and what is necessary, the development itself. So that would be the system. So our recovery mechanism within the Section 75 is quite essential.
So that's just the mechanics of that. I'll come back to Mr. Teed to allow him to comment. But that's a kind of pause in review that takes place before a final investment decision is made. That's what you're talking about? Yeah, that the Section 75 builds in a further process for sense checking where you are a year down the line, 2 years down the line, whatever it is. But before final investment decisions made, that's what you're asking for.
Yes.
I think the answer is yes. So clearly this is not a contribution that has to be made right away. And the formulation that Mr. Teed has put in the response to the questions is, if I may say so, a sensible one. 50% completion and then 75% completion. The question of drafting the refund provisions, if I can call them that, is, I think, really a matter for the parties, not a matter for the reporter. You could content yourself, not that you couldn't do it, of course, because you can do it, but it's not usual to see a reporter drafting the detailed text of a Section 75 agreement. What we would want to try and build in is, as you say, periodic sense checking and a refund if Mr. Teed's population projections do not do what he says they'll do. In other words, the money is not needed. We don't yet know, for example, whether we're talking about an extension or a new building. Nobody's done any work on what might be the most suitable way to spend this money. So there's quite a bit of work to do down the road, I would suggest, in deciding what is suitable for this particular primary school if this accommodation is needed, and if you should decide that in fact a contribution is required.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. So, yeah, so there was two elements to my question, and those answers there from you and Mr. McKinney are not surprising to me. That's all about sense check, a further analysis before you decide to invest. But what I also thought, and maybe I got this wrong, so I just want to be clear about it. I also thought what Mr. McKinney had been saying in his report is that, let's say you did that sense check and you built 3 classrooms in extension. I'm just using that for the sake of it. But it turned out 5 years down the line, or 3 years down the line, that school didn't really need that. It only needed 2 classrooms. I thought Mr. McKinney was saying then that the cost of that 3rd classroom spent by the council, gleaned from a contribution, should be returned. Even though it's been spent, the council should pay back that aspect of the contribution because it turns out to have been an overestimate after the fact. So there's 2. So you see the difference. I just want to check, is that what you were asking, Mr. McKinney, or have I misunderstood the point?
That is what I was suggesting. It's a mechanism that I've used previously, and that the developers have had monies refunded to them after originally putting up quite a large sum. To actually complete an extension at a school, the development then only required a small proportion of that actual extension in terms of capacity, and then monies were then refunded back to the appellant because clearly they had overprovided and had been asked to overprovide. So money reverting back to the appellant.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tweed, so Mr. Teed, giving you the chance to come back on the 2 propositions, the ones about the sense check or the building into the, and I will say, Mr. Campbell, you're quite right. I will try and avoid getting into any of this if I can, but we're here because of an inability for parties to agree, and so if it needs to be part of my decision, then it needs to be part of my decision. But ordinarily, these would be matters for the parties. So, Mr. Teed, sorry, the 2 propositions are a sense check, a review pre-investment, but also this idea that if it turns out that the school extension is too big, then it needed to have been that you refund the money that you've already spent to the developer. So I just wondered what the council's position is, or your position is on those points.
Yeah, well, the only agreements we've gone into on the terms of the clawback clause is after a specified period of time, if the money isn't spent on its declared purpose, then it's refunded with interest. When we do spend the money, normally in a Section 75 agreement, we're required to provide details of what we spent the money on once it's been completed and the contracts are all signed and we've paid for it. I would caution against doing a kind of quality assessment on how we've spent it in terms of the capacity provided, because it's not just about the classrooms, it's about the ancillary areas, the landscaping and everything like that. it would become very difficult, I think, to disentangle all of that and try and say, well, you've over-specified this extension. And, you know, if we're not going to over-specify the extension, you know, based on the information we've got. If we build it and, you know, and then there's a, you know, unforeseen decline in population, then there's nothing we could have done about that. But you know, similarly, what usually happens, we've never actually been able to extend a school to meet demand from new housing fully from the cost of developer planning obligations. The council have always had to provide some funds towards that. I think in recent years we've got closer to being able to fully developer fund extensions that have been the consequence of housing developments, but we've never actually been able to achieve that kind of nirvana, if you like. So the council always has this sort of liability to deal with anyway. So we have to be very careful how we specify extensions. We don't build lots of capacity just because we've got the money. I think we try and build the best we can for the school in the circumstances with the information that we've got. And I think the costs that I've estimated based on projections and what have you are based on floor space, and it's actually extension costs. It's not a new build, although we would have to build a replacement nursery to allow that the primary to expand into the nursery space, because, you know, from a kind of space and layout point of view, that normally works better. And looking at Whitecross Primary School, I think that's probably the way the architects will go to add the capacity to the school as required. And I did run it by the architects as well to just check that they were happy with that approach and the floor space that had been calculated.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I'm clear about your response to the second proposition that I made, which is you wouldn't agree with it. On this idea of the more standard clawback, if you said that typically there would be a clause which provided for monies to be returned if not spent for the purpose agreed within a certain time. Standard approach that you would see in a Section 75 obligation. So to be clear, you wouldn't be wanting a Section 75 obligation that said that made specific provision for doing further analysis at a later subsequent point in time to check whether the extension, if there is one that we think is needed now, is still the right size. You would, if let's say a Section 75 provided for 3 new classes, it would always provide 3 new classes, and if you built them, that's fine. But if you only ended up building 2, that would be your decision, or the council's decision, to take a view in that, and they would just refund the unspent sums. It wouldn't be something that you wouldn't be building in provision to then go away and re-agree it 2 years hence, 3 years hence. That would be a decision the council would be taking on itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we don't really have a template for looking at a Section 75 agreement in that way, but I mean, if the developer has, or you know, because the applicant's not necessarily the developer in any of these things, so you know, the permission gets passed through sometimes to further developers. So you know, that's why we don't discuss these details at this particular point in time normally. But yeah, you know, we can discuss anything, but like I say, we've never really faced that discussion before, and we've got no templates as far as I'm aware of Section 75 agreements in the 15 years I've been dealing with them. But you know, occasionally we have paid money back because it's usually in the situation where we've been collecting planning gain on the basis of collective pressures from lots of different proposals, and they don't all come at once, and you know, one comes 5 years before the others, and the risks kind of move away from the sort of near and present danger, if you like, and we don't spend the money within 10 years, which is in the Section 75 agreement. Money gets refunded, so yeah, got no problem with that at all.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, could I ask Mr. Teed a question through you?
Sure.
Mr. Teed, are you the man who makes the decisions about the amount of planning gain which is appropriate to a particular development? And if so, are you the man to negotiate with?
I assess the risk. We've got a SG10, which is our supplementary guidance, and that provides a kind of standard pro rata rate that we apply when there's collective pressures. Where there's a specific development we know is going to impact a single school, and we're going to have to build something to meet the demand from that particular development, we look at what the costs of that, and sometimes it's a bit less than the standard rates, and sometimes it's a bit more. But we just work out based on what we think the extension is going to be required. So yeah, so I advise on that. I don't make the ultimate decision. That these developments of this scale usually go through the council for a decision, and sometimes there's a bit of discussion with the developer, and planning consultants on behalf of the developer will discuss the requirements with me, and we'll look at it from that perspective. So, but yeah, I'm open. I'm open to discussion and all the scrutiny, and it's just about getting a figure that can be agreed, so that the council aren't left with a financial obligation further down the line.
Presumably, sir, you wouldn't mind if Mr. Teed and my team went on talking to each other. Negotiations been a bit thin on the ground in this case up to now, but presumably it's going to take you a few months to write your decision. So presumably you don't mind this matter being discussed on an ongoing basis with the council, and then if we reach agreement, telling you so that you don't have to make a decision at all. Or do you mind?
Oh no, I don't mind. Those would be matters entirely for the parties. I would hope to better your estimate of a few months, though. I think my intention, I've not been. I've been taking account of all the written evidence so far, and I'm using this process to narrow the gaps in my reasoning and understanding. So I'm talking about a few weeks before I make a decision at the most, rather than a few months.
Well, thank you. That's very reassuring. I think, Mr. Teed, you can take it that somebody will be in touch with you.
Okay, yeah. I can't really adjust the estimates of what it'll cost to extend, because that's based on floor space and and SFT standard metrics and stuff like that. So so it's based on the best information I've got estimating cost of extensions, and we always underestimate at this stage of things. So the council always end up paying a bit more, in my experience. But we might be getting better than this, and in the future we might actually get one under budget instead of over budget. But we never over specify them ever because of that situation.
Okay, thanks very much.
We've lost sound, Mr. Little. Can't hear you.
I beg your pardon. I unmuted myself. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to nursery accommodation, which is the last item on the agenda. My question, this is just a factual one first of all. My question, W10, I asked if the current capacity of the nursery was 20, and you said yes. Mr. Teed or the council said yes. Mr. McKinney has said that the school offers 24 nursery places. So I just want two different figures there. Maybe they're telling me different things, but Mr. Teed, can you just help me out with why I've got two different figures?
Well, it's around about 20. It's before it went to full time, 1140 hours. It was 2020, but they only ran the morning session because that was all that was required. And now it's for 20 full day places. So they may be providing 24. I'm not quite sure at this point in time, but that depends on how they resource it, I think. But it is all about floor space. The care inspectorate define how much you can run a nursery for, and there are some flexibilities around that number, but that usually depends on how in terms of the staffing resource. So it might be a little more, and some situations it's a little less. So we can usually squeeze a few more places out of the nursery if we put in additional early years officers, assistants.
Okay. Yeah. There's two capacity constraints in there's staffing and finance, and there's floor space, and I'm interested in the latter one. Is the council saying, and it's maybe just a minor point, that the nurseries, albeit you might be able to push and squeeze here and there, but for a working assumption that the nursery's full in terms of its floor space?
Yeah, it's at high occupancy now, so the new development would require additional floor space for the nursery.
Thanks very much, Mr. McKinney. That was just a factual point. I just want to understand the council's position. I'm not sure we need to go further on that point. I'm going to come on to a bit more about calculating what's needed or what might be needed, but are you content to move on from this issue of the current capacity, or have you got anything to add?
Well, I do have concerns, sir. The current threat, the council register all nursery provision with, they have, and the nursery loaded has been registered for daycare of children service to a maximum of 24 children aged 3 years to those not yet attending primary school at any one time. And so that's the current registration that is with our inspectorate, is for children. And in terms of the school handbook, it refers to 24 pupils, full-time places at the school. And the handbook also acknowledges that there are currently 60 pupils on the school roll. So from a developer's perspective, we're looking at a nursery school of 24 pupils meeting current regulations. If the council chooses to staff it differently, well, that should not impact on the overall capacity that's available at the nursery.
Thank you. Right, I just want to move on then, just to understand the council's position in terms of entitlement, and so as I understand what is actually happening indeed. So, and this is my question 11. So, I set this out in the agenda again. I think my understanding is that, so the 1,140 hours per year entitlement for ages 2 to 4 would mean 38 weeks at 30 hours a week. So it's in effect a full-time place during term time. And if you were to base a contribution on supplementary grade SG10, the PPR given in SG10 is 0.1. So 225 houses would give you a requirement for 22.5 or 23 places. Is that right, Mr. T? That's what I've just set out there is correct in terms of the entitlement, in terms of how SG10 says about it. I'm getting the thumbs up, so that's good. That similarly, we no need to go over all ground, but that doesn't take into account of further births feeding in. It's just based on the PPR. And the council's position is that the cost of this need to come from the developer because the existing nursery, based on that level of entitlement, is at capacity. Yeah.
Sorry, my the school handbook.
Mr. McKinney, I'm going to ask.
Basis, and the duration of the session is 9 to 3, so that's meeting the full requirements.
Well, I'm not sure I've got the school's handbook in front of me as evidence. I might do it. It might be in one of your productions. I'm not sure, but can I just go back a stage? I just want to give Mr. Teed the chance to confirm I'd set out what I thought was the entitlement position and what the council's position was. And I just want to check that I got that right, Mr. T.
Yeah, we would expect around about that number of nursery pupils. Yeah. Just to clarify the earlier point you made, that the 1140 expansion at the nursery actually registered the outdoor space. I've just looked at the document that I've got. So that is why it went up from 20 to 24. It was the outdoor space was registered. So, which we've been doing at a number of nurseries. But yes, based on the pupil product ratio, we would expect 0.1 pupil per house, so 22, 23 children from this development, based on council averages, to be attending the nursery, 3 and 4 year old.
So Mr. McKinney, so according to the council, the nursery's full, therefore you go to SG10 and that provides that gives you the calculation for this development in terms of nursery provision. Are you saying the nursery's not full, or are you saying that SG10 is wrong? Just so I understand what you're saying.
I'm suggesting that the nursery and the councils in their latest documentation suggest that the nursery places are full-time nursery places, and a session which is from 9 until 3, that there meets all of the current regulatory requirements. And some of those requirements are set out in SG10. So the school handbook clearly has this set out, and the registration, the council have a duty to ensure that the registrations are current and up to date. So if the council are saying it's a different number, well, that should be reflected on the registration, the inspectorate website.
I think I've got enough there to proceed, and that would be the last item on their agenda. So unless there's other points anyone wishes to make, I would propose to end this session and move swiftly on to hearing 5. Are people content that I can do that now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So welcome then to hearing 5 of the Crownerland farm appeal. And this relates to Graham High School, and participating this afternoon are the same people participating this morning. So we can skip our introductions, and I can skip my housekeeping announcements that I made earlier on. And similarly, we will be referring to the same set of documents, or a similar set of documents as we did earlier on, but hopefully less extensively. Item 1 on the agenda is the appellant's secondary school projections. So in responding to this, the appellant refers to the projections it provided, and that was his document 4.1, Mr. McKinney's initial report. In the answer the appellant gives, I'll just read out one of the sentences. The projection uses factors based on gross rates and does not discount for housing completions to obtain net forecast factors. So I wondered, Mr. McKinney, can you just briefly explain to me the difference between here, your use of gross as opposed to net? What are you saying?
Yes, the difference between a net and gross previously, if I was working with a council or working with data from England, I would be able to calculate net factors. And the net factors are those whereby you remove the influence of new housing from the forecast. So that you can then have a workout what is happening in a catchment area or across a local authority without any influence of new housing, but the local patterns developed and set out. In this case, I use a gross model simply because I can't obtain detailed housing information on a completion basis down to individual catchments. If I had that down to individual catchments on individual streets, then I would calculate net forecast factors. But that information is currently not available in Scotland. The Scottish assessor will release the information and information that's contained within, or certainly it's not current enough, has not had enough history to be used in Scotland as yet. The information in England is certainly much more reliable, but it's not at that stage yet in Scotland. So that's the difference between the net and the gross.
Does that result in either an undercount or an overcount of pupils, or is it just that it means that it's not as spatially sensitive as it would otherwise have been, but it's overall it still gives you the same amount?
Yeah, I think the method is probably simpler because you're not reducing it down to net influences and then trying to calculate all the influences from new housing. You're basically saying the forecast, you're looking back over time historically to see what has taken place. You're not then separating out the influence of new housing as opposed to any other migratory type move or trend. You're just looking at the change of numbers that actually takes place.
Right. So it's
if a catchment area has had 1,000 houses built over the last 10 or so years, then the gross projection will expect that will continue because that will be part of the forecast factors, migration calculations.
Right. So for each catchment, you're projecting forward what's happened over the last number of years. That's what you mean. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's in a catchment by catchment basis, not like in a council wide basis. Is that right?
It's on a catchment by catchment basis, yes.
Thanks. That's helpful. Mr. Teed, not necessarily thinking you need to come in this point, because it was just for clarity as to what Mr. McKinney was saying to me. But have you got anything you want to say about that?
No, nothing to.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have any questions on my follow-up questions to G2 or indeed to G3. So yeah, if we can move on then to the council's secondary school projections. In terms of question 4, I just note the council's answer, and that's fine. But I just want to widen out a little. We're similar to the discussion we had for the primary school, but not, Mr. Teed, you'll be glad to know, not as extensive, I don't think. So can we have a look at again at FC 021, the 7-page document? But we're also going to look at the council's response to the procedure notice, the 36-page PDF. If you have both those available.
Okay.
Okay, great. If we look first at FC 21, And so now, which is page 6. So the projections there are with housing built in, that housing from this development built in, and they have a school role by 2029 at 103% of capacity. Okay.
Okay.
Right. And then if you look at the council's response to the procedure notice, which I got after FC21, if we look at page 20 of that, that has a projection. So the row projections table on page 20 of the PDF, that has a school for the same year, that has a school at 106% of occupancy. Okay, so it's 103 in FC21 and it's 106 in the other projections. So they're different. FC21 is the bespoke one. FC, the one from the consultation response, is that the kind of standard adopted projection? I'm just trying to understand why they're different and which one I should use.
Yeah, well, the one in the response to procedure note, that includes the Gilston and the other Whitecross developments proposals, the manual works proposal, which were in the sort of broader assessment of housing proposals. The response to the response to the January appeal thing, that 7-page document, the one there, doesn't include Gilston and manual works. It's really just to demonstrate that without those big proposals, Graham High School still got a risk to capacity, because I think the appellant was disputing whether those developments were viable or were going to go ahead. So I just wanted to demonstrate that even if you take those out, there is a, you know, they would have a much bigger impact longer term. But yeah, it's a combination really of the current demographics, you know, the existing kids within the system, and the housing developments as they progress.
Okay, so the ones in the procedure notice, they're not ones that you've prepared for the appeal. Those were the ones off the shelf, the council's latest standard ones. So in terms of when they were produced, they predate the one you did for FC 021.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That was back in was that 2019, 20? Yeah, I'm losing track of when these were all provided, but yeah.
It says roll projections 2019-20. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would have been prepared September 2019.
Okay. And so those were based on the housing development as was then in the local development plan, whereas the one you produced more recently strips those out, but it makes it's based on the appeal proposal as the only development, if you like, which is live and
yeah.
Those. Okay, right. Okay. And so, yeah. So if I'm using if I'm referring to the one in procedure note 21, we had a discussion earlier on about the transition of primary school children into preschool children into primary school children, and then moving on to secondary school children. So those projections in FC 21, do they would factor in the transition of existing primary school pupils into the school? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that kind of affects the tail end of the projections. So yeah, so that's why the impact doesn't seem very big, but it will exacerbate as the years go on.
Okay,
yeah.
So yeah, okay, so because of the lag, if you like, it's making assumptions about a pupil product ratio directly for secondary school pupils, but it's also factoring in the primary school pupils that would be generated by development but feed in later years. That's all included in this FC21 model. Yeah.
Yeah, it's included in both of them, but yeah.
Okay, and birth rates won't be such a big deal because it just doesn't look that far ahead.
No, not for secondary projections. No.
Okay. That's fine. And it doesn't include any development in Gelston as a housing site, would it? Because I think
that was included in the. I think I provided you with the Schlepp, which is our 10 years. So that shows you the housing that goes into the standard projections. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Gelston would feature in both those projections then as a housing development.
No, it doesn't feature in the one in the 7-page document. I just took it out just to demonstrate that, you know, if there was a dispute over the viability of that development, because it has got a checkered history in recent years with, you know, with coming to committee and been discussed. So, but and also its status within the development plans. So I just wanted to just take them out of the ones I've supplied just to show that there was a risk, regardless of that. I mean, there is a risk to capacity based on, you know, any new housing happening as we see it going forward. It's just the extent of that risk depends on the level of new housing and how many big developments coincide. So, but from my projections, the risk is there, and yeah.
Okay, well that's fine. I'm just trying to understand what I'm looking at for the most part. That's okay. So, in SC21, 5 is page 5 is the projections without any housing development, and then 6 builds in. I don't know, 6 is different. We can forget about 6. 7 is the impact of new housing development, including Crownerland Farm, but not Gilston and Manmill Works. Okay, right, fine, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was totally sure about what I was looking at. Mr. Campbell, Mr. McKinney, I think it's just factual. I'm not thinking I need any more from you in those points, but I don't want to cut you out of that discussion. But, are we happy to move on?
Not for me, certainly. And Mr. McKinney?
But there's a big lorry outside.
I was just simply just trying to understand what I was looking at, Mr. McKinney, from the projections. So, for Graham High School from the council. So I think Mr. Teed was telling me I should be looking at the projections, the newer, more recently produced projections in FC21, and he was just explaining the basis for having using strip second one, which is in page 6 of the document, I think, which shows the Crownerland farm proposal and other new housing, but not Gilston or Manwell Works. I was just trying to, when discussing the merits of it, I was just trying to understand what it was I was looking at. So I think I understand that now. So I'm not. I don't want to cut you out of the discussion. I don't think I need to know any more. But if you've got any observation on that factual point, or can we just move on?
If we're going to discuss some of the housing input that the council have used, then I do have concerns. I've referenced what is known as a special housing land audit education.
David, we can't really hear you. David McKinney, we can't really hear you. If you could speak up.
All right, sorry.
Thank you.
Apologies. Yes, my concern relates to the housing that the council have taken into forecast and do go into forecast. And they seem to include everything that has a potential.
I'm sorry, David.
Interest.
I'm sorry, you'll have to start again, David. Not picking this up at all. Could you speak closer? Could you speak closer to the microphone and a little more slowly, please?
Yep, I'll try that. The council make use of a special indeed they have submitted in their final submissions a document setting out the housing in the Graham High School catchment area. And that's noted as being an SHLAEP, and it's a special housing land audit extract for education purposes. Now, the difficulty I have with that as a schedule is that the housing that's actually got permission within the Graham High School catchment area amounts to 58 units. And thereafter, in terms of LDP, there are 550 units coming forward from the LDP. And then there's a raft of sites coming on which are have no basis in terms of housing audit. And the number of units we're referring to is several thousand. So my concern is that the council seem to choose almost randomly housing sites to put in, or they're creating housing schedules that might reflect interest across an area, but don't actually reflect the housing that is really coming forward and needs to be taken account of in a forecast. So I have grave concerns with that as a standard practice.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney, and Mr. Vivian. Welcome. It's probably perfect timing actually, because we might be straying into parts of the agenda where you more in addition to Mr. Teed might have anything to give me. Yeah, Mr. McKinney, you've preempted my question, which was going to be about that piece of work. I wasn't aware that such a special housing land audit for education purposes existed until I saw the response to question G5, or the responses anyway. SG10 doesn't mention it. SG10, in fact, in paragraph 3.3 says that the housing land audit is used for the projections. So that's why I was surprised to see this additional bit of evidence. I was simply then just going to ask for your comments on it on behalf of the appellant. You've just given me them, that's fine. So I guess either Mr. Teed or Mr. Vivian, if indeed you heard, Mr. Vivian, if indeed you heard what Mr. McKinney had just said there about the special housing land audit, does the council want to give me a response to Mr. McKinney's comments there?
I think I would probably ask Catherine Devlin to come in at this point.
You're still muted.
Can't hear you, Mr. Devlin. Still can't hear you, Mr. Devlin.
You briefly came off mute and then went back on it again, so I don't know whether it's just trying the button again. That's it? No, it's not. Okay, obviously I can see your involvement, Ms. Devlin. Your microphone's coming on and off again. So what I'd suggest, we'll maybe move on to the next item, and then we can come back and give you a chance to respond if you can sort that IT issue out there. Just let me know if it gets sorted. Mr. Campbell, you were waving your hand at me. Did you have something to add to what Mr. McKinney said, or are you content just to move on?
No, I was just trying to draw your attention to Ms. Devlin's request for her to speak, but she's not managed to get through to us, I'm afraid. No, I have nothing to add to what.
Okay, that's fine, and that was my fault because Mr. Vivian did say to me that Ms. Devlin would be the best person to address the special housing land audit, and I'd just forgotten that. So hopefully she'll come back and we can sort that out. Okay, can we move on then, as perhaps only temporarily, to placing requests? And my question, G7. And the council said what it said in response. In Mr. McKinney's supplementary report, so the one he prepared in response to the council's appeal response, he says reserving capacity, for example, for pupils in new housing is no longer a significant problem. There is a significant statutory support to achieve this. So, Mr. McKinney, can you just explain what you mean by that?
Difficult issue for councils for many years, subject to the introduction of the 1980 education.
David, start again. Start again, please.
I was saying that managing capacity.
David, we can't hear you.
I'll try again. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Managing capacity has been a difficult issue for councils since the introduction of placing requests through the 1980 Education Act. And it meant that councils could refuse places at schools with a very limited range of statutory reasons, none of which included a capacity. However, over the years, then other measures have introduced to start to assist councils in this. Initially in the mid-90s with the first part reserve places. That didn't work very well. And then that was amended in quick succession by legislation in 2000. So that now in terms of the Education Act, there are specific references to capacity within that. And you can also use what's known as, you can also combine different bits of the legislation to help manage capacity. So that when, for example, you might have a low intake year to a secondary school, normally you might feel that previously in the 80s through to the 90s, it would have been the circumstance that the council would not have any chance of sustaining managing that intake if said included a large number of placing requests. The council would be more or less obliged to say yes because it had the capacity. However, today you can now look to the position that capacity could be exceeded. You can look to your powers to reserve places during the school session, and you can also then look to the staffing input at the school. And if the losing or admitting children has the impact of going over staffing levels at the school, then you can say, well, okay, we need to reserve places in our existing classes. And the first children then that would be excluded from those classes would be children who have made a placing request. So although you're only doing it on a year-by-year basis, you can certainly then start to consider the impacts of such decisions and use it to start to manage capacity much more proactively than has ever been the case.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKinney. And one question that I had picked up on was this idea of only having the ability to look a year ahead, which the council had mentioned, and you've said there that that's the case, that these are means by which you can look to manage capacity, but with that kind of 1 year horizon looking ahead. Just staying on capacity issues, can we look again? Sorry, look this time at the appellant's response to Procedure Note 5. When that's 142 pages, and I'm interested in page 22. So I'm going to just call that up here, and if you have it before you, that would be helpful. So that might be the appendices. That might be the appendices to that document. I'll just confirm that. Yeah, so it's the appendices to the appellant's response to Procedure Note 5, if you're able to find that, and then it's a 142-page PDF, and I want to look at page 22 of that PDF, and it's an extract from a Falkirk Council document. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Is it a Is that the document with multiple tables in it?
The document, it was appended to the appellant's response to Procedure Notice 5, and it starts off with a master plan. Actually, it's 142 pages long. It's got some extracts from reports, but what I'm interested in is page 22 of it, which is it's called Appendix 1. That's what the first line of it is, but it's a Falkirk Council publication, which is about placing requests and what the Act says or doesn't say about them, or what the Act does say about them. So it looks like an extract from a Falkirk Council document. You provided it to me.
Page 22, David.
Yeah. Got the wrong document at the moment.
Have you got that there?
Sorry, were you asking me? I have it.
Yeah, you've got it. So, do you have that document before you?
I'm trying to find it at the moment, sir.
I don't know if Mr. Teed's hearing you, sir. Oops.
Mr. Teed, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Thank you. I'm directing Mr. McKinney to a document, but I'm going to ask you about it. So,
Okay.
This is. If you got it before you, did you hear that exchange earlier?
Yes, I have. Yeah, that's Appendix 1. That's what we send out with a placing request refusals to outline the statutory grounds for refusal.
So, well, I'll let Mr. McKinney try and find it. The question's to you. Mr. McKinney was, you'll have heard what he said earlier on about saying that it's easier now, or there's more reasons for refusing placing requests than there used to be. Can I just ask for microphones to come off, unless it's me and Mr. Teed just now, please. So Mr. McKinney was saying the council's got more reasons for refusing placing requests than it used to have, and it can manage capacity in that way, albeit only a year in advance. And I think part of his evidence for that was producing this document to show that the council can manage, that there are these ways that you can manage requests. So I just wondered if you had any response to both that more general point that he makes, that you have a lot of leeway here to manage capacity, manage requests to reduce capacity issues, but kind of secondly, is Appendix 1, is that the right bit of statute that governs the wriggle room you have? So that's the heart of the matter, yeah?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's further legislature on reserve places and things like accepted places, but that's kind of minor issues. I mean, we can reserve places for housing developments that are going on at the time for that year, but we can't reserve places for years beyond the current session or the forthcoming session. So we can't plan strategically school capacity using placing requests, because we wouldn't be able to defend refusals unless they met those criteria. And, you know, we have to assume things remain constant. You'll see there in I think it's 28A, 3A, 6, it says assuming that pupil numbers remain constant, making necessary at the commencement of a future stage, etc. So that really defines how far we can look ahead and the way we can look ahead into future years. The refusal reason that David was referring to is give rise to significant expenditure on extending or otherwise altering accommodation of facilities provided in connection with the school. Now, that's either we have to put in a temporary mobile classroom that year to accommodate the placing requests. We use that reason on those occasions. It's harder to prove that we have to do a sort of a permanent extension, but the only circumstances we could use that in relation to a secondary school. Secondary schools are much more difficult to get firm grounds for refusal on because of the complexities of timetable and what have you. But in terms of capacity, it's a reason we haven't used, even in schools where we're really experiencing this, because it's a hard one to defend. But if the intake went above the level that could be sustained year on year, I think, although I wouldn't put it down as a primary reason for refusal, I might put it down as a supporting reason for refusal in a secondary placing request. But we have to be absolutely certain that we can sustain a refusal at appeal, because what we don't want to be doing is speculatively refusing applications to manage a problem which isn't related to placing requests, and to have to defend lots and lots of appeals. We just don't have the resources and the time to do that, because we don't have a great deal of appeals at Falkirk Council, I think. But the ones that we do have, I think, although we don't win them all, we generally get upheld the reasons that we presented, and they're generally overturned on all other circumstances which an appeal committee are allowed to do. I'm not hearing you, Mr. Little.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I beg your pardon. And I'm just going to look into the right place. Yeah, so right at the end of that extract from Appendix 1, which is 3C in brackets, is that the clause, if you like, which restricts this ability to manage or to look forward to this 1 year horizon? That's what brings in the 1 year limit. Is that correct?
3A6 So it's 28A3, section 3, and then under A, it's the 6th reason for refusal. Those 7 grounds for refusals are the ones we've got to use for placing requests. So we have to conform to at least one of those for mainstream placing requests. There's a different set of reasons for additional support needs, but the mainstream, which is the majority of placing requests, those are the ones we have to adhere to.
Oh, okay, that's good. Thank you. And just to summarise what I think you were saying, I mean, you gave me some detail, but you seem to be saying that to seek to use placing requests as a means of managing school capacity in a kind of strategic and longer term sense just wouldn't be a viable mechanism to do it. Okay, no. Okay, that's your view. I've got Mr. McKinney's view. I'm not sure I really need any more on that, but is there anything, Mr. McKinney, you want to say in response before we move on?
I think the remark I've already made is that councils need to be proactive in buying the placing requests, and I know indeed times of a restricted budget and wishing to be seen to be helpful to parents, many councils have stepped back from applying the placing request criteria because the number of places say that are being exceeded in 1 year it's not that many, and it's quite an easy thing to do. It keeps the council popular. But the perspective I'm coming from is proactive use of the grounds of refusal, which do, in some cases, are actually very considerable, where you can, in terms of reserved places, you can have numbers by stage, you can have percentages by stage, you can have numbers total across the school, so that the powers can be actually quite far-ranging in terms of how they are applied. And the essential point is being proactive with that when you can, in order to help manage capacity issues at schools. That's what the powers were put into that legislation for. That's the exact reasons why.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKinney. The short silence is for anyone who. Oh, sorry, Mr. T. You wanted to come in.
Yeah, just on the reserved places, we calculate and publish them annually in the information bulletin in June. We didn't this year because of COVID and some changes over the nursery side of things, but they remain fairly constant. We've got a formula for calculating them so that they're reasonable, and we include new housing developments in our calculations. So schools which are subject to a lot of new housing have a higher number of reserved places proportionately. So, but we can only reserve places for the existing or forthcoming session. We can't reserve places beyond that. So even if we knew that housing development was going to generate lots of children in future years, there's no way we could reserve places for those future years. We can only reserve places for the children that are going to be generated during the coming session. And it's really to protect places so that children moving into the area can go to their local school, so that we've got enough spaces for people moving into the area. But as I say, we calculate that on an annual basis.
Thank you for that. These short pauses are just while I finish my notes before moving on. Okay, if we're all content, then I want to move on to the 4th item of the agenda, which is the school premises regulations, which is a kind of factual point that hopefully we can resolve. So again, I'm sorry. I need to drag you to a document. We had document 4.3 there, which was the long appendices, but also I want to look at 4.1, which is Mr. McKinney's initial report. Actually, sorry, we didn't have document 4.3, but if we can try and have these two before us, Mr. McKinney's document 4.1 and his 4.3, which accompanied it. So in 4.1, in paragraph 61, if you don't have the document, you can take it from me just now. But Mr. McKinney refers to Scottish schools estate data, and then in document 4.3, his table 14 covers this. I'm just going to get that document up myself. It's in the appellant's hearing documents. If you've got those before you, it's a 48-page PDF. Have people got it?
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I'm going to be asking the council a question about this, and hopefully, Mr. Teed, it's not so much to do with education planning directly. It's about premises regulations, but you may be able to help me in that. Well, let's see. If we go to page 15 of 48 of that PDF, which is where Mr. McKinney's table 14 is.
Yep.
And so he produces this, which seems to show a requirement for the school of 6.9 hectares, and that this area of the school is slightly short of that under the regulations. But the council's answer to my question on this G8 was that the premises requirement is 2.83 hectares. So this isn't a question which I would have expected the parties to be unable to agree as to what the premises regulations say for the school's requirement. So I guess, Mr. Teed, is Mr. McKinney wrong on this point?
Well, I just referred to the 1967 regs when that question was raised. I hadn't picked up that it was under dispute, but yeah, based on those 67 regs, which are available on legislation.gov.uk, the requirement for a school of 1,400 pupils is 2.83 hectares, which is actually 7 acres in old money, because they don't talk in hectares in those regs because they're so old. And the site area Graham High School is actually 16.36 acres or 6.62 hectares. So it's well within the permitted requirements. I wouldn't see any problem with being able to extend within the existing footprint.
Let's stick to hectares so I don't get too confused. Mr. McKinney, that's really different figure from what you've got. Mr. Teed says it's based on the 67 regs and 1,400 houses. 1,400 pupils rather. How have you come to such a different figure?
It's simply the table in the regulations that refers to playing field requirement, and there's a significant playing field requirement for a school such as Graham High School. And that is where on my basis is essential to actually meet the regulations. It's not a matter that councils can ignore. So if the 67 regulation asks for a school playing field and a specific size of school playing field for secondary schools, well then I do expect that all councils should be meeting those requirements. And the table number for that is held in part it's the table, just a wee second, table 5, which refers to the areas. So it's under regulation 8, and it's sites for playing fields, and it says every primary school or every secondary school shall have available to it fields not less than the area specified in table 5, according to the number of pupils for which the school is designed. So to my mind, then, that's quite essential that the school site has to include not only the area for the overall areas already mentioned by Mr. Teed, it also has to include the area in terms of playing fields. That's a requirement. Has not changed.
Okay, so these are the 1967 regulations. You're both referring to the same ones. There's no doubt that those still exist. They haven't changed in all those years. The table so there's two. It sounds like there's two tables. Mr. Teed has referred me to the overall site area requirement, which is 2.83 hectares. So, Mr. McKinney, you're agreed on that point. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Right, but the school, there's an additional table which has figures for the amount of playing fields which have to be available to a school, which is much bigger than the overall site area of the school, which suggests to me that that's allowing for the possibility that those playing fields available to the school might be off-site. Is that fair enough?
There's a bit of a reference to that in terms of being the wording is that they are available. So they could be off-site, but they need to be available to the school. And it can't be miles away from the school. It has to be reasonable. So you wouldn't expect a whole afternoon to be spent going to and from the playing fields. They have to be accessible.
Okay, that's helpful. That clarifies for me why I've got two different answers to what I thought was the same question. I don't think we need to take it any more than that, unless Mr. Teed has got anything to add, because you hadn't picked up that there was a dispute or a problem with what I had, Mr. Teed. Did you get anything to add, or can we move on?
Well, I'd be surprised if the playing fields weren't big enough to meet the regulations. I haven't got a plan in front of me and I haven't measured them, but if the overall site's 16 acres, needs to be 16 acres, and there's 9 acres of that needs to be playing fields. Sounds about right, knowing the site, because they have got quite substantial playing fields at Graham High School. It's an SFA footballing academy as well, so it does a lot of outdoor sports.
I think we can move on from this point. I think I've got what I need. That takes us to the end of all the questions that I had. It's been helpful. I suspected it didn't take as long as hearing 4. Are there any points that need to be made which haven't been? Mr. Vivian, you missed a large part of the meeting, maybe, but I didn't. We didn't, from my recollection, of any questions that Mr. Teed felt couldn't be answered. Oh, now I've just remembered, Ms. Devlin, we had to move on from the point about the special housing land audit. Are you able to unmute and go back to that point? Right. Okay. We still can't hear you. I don't know what's going on with that. Okay. Let me just check my notes again, because I just want to remind myself exactly whether that's been left hanging or not. Yeah. So, Mr. Vivian, you deferred to Ms. Devlin on that point. Mr. McKinney, Gary's views on the appropriateness of using the special housing land audit. Do you feel you can are in a position to comment on that point, or is it really something that you would have to allow Ms Devlin to comment on?
Now, unfortunately, I've had no involvement in that that matter, so I would have to defer to Ms. on that.
Could I maybe add it's Catherine that produces them, but we do liaise quite closely on the whole area that we're discussing, and the housing land audit doesn't give us the opportunity to look at collective housing pressures over a 10-year basis. So the special housing land audit allows us to do that, looking at all the prospects that are likely to come forward within the next 10 years. And it gives us an opportunity to produce a risk assessment. And like I say, when we get an application for a new housing development, we've only got a limited period of time to assess that. So we need to have a clear view of what other developments are likely to come forward within a school catchment area, so that we can understand what the collective pressure is going to be on that school, and we can make a fair and proportionate request to each development if additional capacity is going to be required. Otherwise, subsequent housing developments that come along in a year or two are subject to much higher contribution requirements because, even though we had that information, we didn't use it. So that's what we do. We're really just trying to be fair to all kind of housing developments across the council area. And the special housing land audit is updated on an annual basis to give us that assessment and that 10-year view of likely housing developments across the council area.
I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions about that, Mr. Teed, if you're happy to speak about it. But Ms Devlin, can you wave if you can still hear me? Right, that's good, thank you. So what, if you can listen in, I've got a couple more questions that I'll ask Mr. Teed about this, but I don't want to disadvantage the council on this point. I'll probably go away from here thinking I've got enough to proceed with my decision, but I think maybe you can take a view after that, after the discussion, as to whether or not you feel there's something you would want to have said and couldn't. And if there is, I'm thinking about the best way might be to you could put a short written submission in, and I would give the appellant a chance to comment on it, and that would allow us to make up for the fact that there might be a little gap in the meeting in terms of what the council would want to say. So with that in mind, though, Mr. Teed, so I suppose there's two aspects of interest in what I think you were saying there is that one of the advantages of the special housing land audit is that it looks 10 years ahead rather than 5 for the audit. Yeah, you're nodding, so I'll take that as a yes. But the other difference, it seemed to me, and I think you said this in your evidence, is that, for example, when we think about the old local plan allocations in Whitecross, between, I think it was something like 30 units a year was assumed in the housing land audit as a completion rate, whereas the special housing land audit for education purposes assumed 50 units a year as a completion rate. So unless I'm getting this wrong, there was a difference not just in horizon, but a difference in build rate assumed in the two audits. That's correct, isn't it?
I mean, the housing land audit and the education land audit is are done from completely different reasons. The one for education is really looking at risk, and it's looking at trying to measure the collective risk of housing developments across an area. The housing land audit is a kind of, I believe, a kind of statutory return that the council do to, to highlight the likely housing developments that they can guarantee will happen in an area for the Scottish Government to use. So they're to completely different purposes. So I don't think you can compare them as closely as that. But yeah, that is correct what you said. Yeah.
Not to put you at a disadvantage here, that what housing land audits do or don't do is subject to much debate in planning just now. But you used the word likely, and that's, I think, a relevant one. Housing land audits are, in my understanding of them, aim to give likely figures for build-out rates for the next 5 years. And you also said that that's the purpose of the special housing land audit. And I appreciate they're there for two different reasons. But if they're both intending to show likely build-out rates, you might expect them to be the same. So, and if this is more a question from Ms. Devlin, this is fine. But would it be fair to characterise the 30 units per year assumption in the audit as likely, and the 50 in the special housing land audit as not necessarily worst case, but a kind of bringing in the risk factor, if you like? And so it might be more cautious that it could be this high rather than it's likely to be this high. Is that fair, or would you rather just defer that to Ms. Devlin?
It's probably best referred to Catherine, to Ms. Devlin, because you know that I'm not involved with assessing these things, but just factor them into the projections.
So that's understood. So since Ms. Devlin can't hear me, Mr. Vivian, that would be my suggestion, that you, if you feel there's something more to be, whether an answer to that question or the last 5 minutes discussion, if the council feels it's got something to put in writing, then I would suggest you can let the office know that you want to do that, and then we could give the appellant the chance to respond. But absent of that, I won't wait for anything to come in. I'll just let you reflect on that point. Mr. Campbell, from a procedural point of view, are you content with just proceeding in that?
Yes, entirely. Thank you. As long as we can have a few days to respond to what the council say on this, but only on that point, not to generate more paper unnecessarily. It's a pity Miss Devlin can't hear us. Well, she can hear us, but she can't speak. Never mind. We can temporise. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And yes, just limited to that one point, that there is enough paper associated with this appeal already. Okay. Unless anyone waves their hand at me and says that they want to say any final remarks, I'm certainly satisfied that I've got what I needed out of today's session. I'm not seeing anybody saying otherwise. So I would just like to thank you again for participating in this. My apologies that we have had problems with connectability. So for Mr. Campbell and Mr. Vivian, I will be speaking to you again next week. But for others, thank you very much, and I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.